So here we go. The race for Congress in the 16th Congressional District has been one of the most highly watched contests in the country. Why? After all, President Trump won the district by 10 points. Voters on the Suncoast have not elected a Democrat to Congress since 1983, but no one motivates Democrats like Donald J. Trump, and the party is hoping this year will be the year to flip this district, which includes Sarasota, Manatee, and southern Hillsborough County. We would like to welcome Congressman Vern Buchanan, who was first elected in 2007, and Democratic challenger David Shapiro, a well-known and accomplished trial attorney in Sarasota. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You both will get a 1 minute for opening remarks, and we had a coin flip a few minutes ago. Congressman, you won, so you get to go first.
Well, I want to thank you, Alan. I want to thank Channel 7 for the opportunity to visit with folks here in the district. Let me just give a little bit of background. I'm a blue-collar kid that grew up in the Detroit area. One of 6 kids. I was the oldest. To give you some sense of that, I had a little background. I remember my father and mother both worked in the factory with 6 kids, but I remember asking my dad, why do you work afternoons? He said, I make another dime an hour. That's where I came from. I put myself through college, and then I met my lovely bride. In 1976, we got married. We celebrated our 42nd anniversary. But we built 2 big companies together, Speedy Printing, 1976. We started with a couple of stores, built that into 750 stores across America, sold it, and then came to Florida in 1990, and we got into car dealerships, and we acquired a lot of car dealerships over a period of time. I only say that humbly because I've lived the American dream, and my goal is to make sure that our children and grandchildren have the same opportunities that I've had. Regardless what their dream might be, I want to make sure I do everything I can to make sure they realize their full potential.
Congressman, thank you. Mr. Shapiro.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan, again for this opportunity. For nearly 30 years, I have had the honor and the privilege of representing people in our community against powerful insurance companies and callous corporations. And really now I see that those very same companies are running Washington as lobbyists and special interests, and Congressman Buchanan is helping them and supporting them. 12 years in Congress, he recently wrote himself a $2.1 million tax break while working families and seniors are struggling. From his record, it appears he doesn't really care about the health care of the working families or people with pre-existing condition. He doesn't care about seniors who are struggling, trying to get by on Medicare and Social Security. And he really doesn't care about the environment, which, as we now see, exacerbates the red tide, which is affecting our way of life and killing our economy. I do care. And that's why I'm running for Congress, because you can't change Congress unless you change the leadership and the people that you send there.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, what might be the most important vote one of these 2 men will have to make. So stay with us. Welcome back to the 16th Congressional District debate. Joining us is Republican Vern Buchanan and Democrat David Shapiro. And gentlemen, we're going to discuss a lot of issues tonight, and I would imagine a lot of issues that you strongly disagree with each other. But arguably, one of the most important votes that one of you 2 men might make in the new Congress, should the Democrats win the control of Congress, is whether or not you would vote to impeach the president if Special Counsel Mueller finds that laws were broken. So let me put the question in this fashion. The president won this congressional district by 10 points. Would both of you promise not to vote for articles of impeachment should the special counsel come up with what he believes are grounds for impeachment? Congressman.
Well, I'll address that, but I do want to go back on his opening statement. He should be ashamed of himself attacking me. I'm not up there to feather my bed or anything like that. I'm up there to make a difference. I mean, he's a personal injury lawyer that sues seniors and everybody else in this community, a lot of my business friends, and he's made millions of dollars doing it. So I just want to make it very clear. If he wants to go down this road, that's why he's losing. He's running a negative campaign. And it's a shame because we should be talking about issues tonight.
Okay, on the issue of impeachment, would you promise right here, right now, you would not vote to impeach the president should articles of impeachment be levied if the Democrats win control?
I would just say this needs, I want to let it play out and see where it goes in terms of the investigation. I think it needs to be a full investigation. I think these things go on way too long, but I'll approach that when that time comes. but I can't imagine this it's going to go to a point of impeachment. Now, the Democrats have made it very clear that they're going to impeach day one. That's their agenda. That's where they want to go with this. They've been wanting to impeach him. If they could have, they could impeach him last year or so. And so we'll see what my opponent says.
Okay, David, same question to you. Would you promise not to vote for articles of impeachment?
Again, I agree with Congressman Buchanan. Nothing can be decided until the Mueller investigation is completed. There's no reason to get ahead of ourselves. We don't know what it's in there. It's all been speculation. There's been a lot of political posturing. But from my point of view, we should finish the investigation, see what it turns up, and then make a decision based on that information. That's how I see it. It's really not a political event at this point. It should simply be an investigation. If nothing else, to determine whether the Russians were involved in our elections, to what extent, and how can we stop it from happening again. Let him finish without impediment.
Follow-up question, Mr. Shapiro. We know what's been in public in terms of the Mueller investigation, the events that led to the firing of the FBI director. Do you believe if the special counsel found that the president committed obstruction of justice, he should be impeached?
Can't make that call right now. It depends. It's crimes and misdemeanors, and it depends if the national security of the United States is in jeopardy. There's so many different things that we don't know just yet. How can anyone make that decision without the conclusion of the investigation? Now it's all speculation.
All right, Congressman, I want to give you the same opportunity.
Yeah, I just think there's so much politicalization. I co-chair the Florida delegation. I've worked with the Democrats, Elsie Hastings, and the two of us work together. We've tried to find areas that we can get agreement on. I just got rated as one of the most effective and one of the most bipartisan members of Congress by University of Virginia and other credible institutions. We've got to find a way to work together.
Okay. Another issue that weighs on the minds of many people who live here on the Suncoast and everywhere is the economy. The stock market continues to soar, except for today. But in corporate profits also are soaring thanks to last year's tax cut. The gross domestic product is over 4%. Unemployment is at a 49-year low. But as the New York Times recently reported, hourly earnings have moved forward at a crawl, with higher prices giving workers less buying power than a year ago. A lot of middle-class residents of the Suncoast continue the struggle to make ends meet. Many still don't earn what they used to before the 2008 economic collapse. So, Congressman, what specific ideas do you have to change that?
Well, I don't think the New York Times is right. I mean, these are a lot of people that are journalists. They're writing things. I've been in business 40 years. The business, when I left, we had 1,200 employees, almost $1 billion enterprise. I can tell you, I ran into a merchant in town just on Main Street having lunch yesterday. And my point is unemployment goes down. They can't find workers. They're going to pay more. You're going to see bigger paychecks. Talk to anybody that's in the real world in terms of running a small business, and they're having to pay more. So with this heat and the economy growing like it is, you're going to try to attract and get the best people or better people, you're going to have to pay a lot more to do it. So I think that's going to be in itself. We've got one of the best economies I've seen in 40 or 50 years. We've had good ones, but growing at 4%, nobody thought we'd ever get to 3%. So I think Trump does get some credit as it relates to what the growth has been. As you know, I chaired the Tax Policy Committee. I still do. I think tax reform has made a huge difference. That's that and deregulation. That's why we're exploding and getting everybody back to work today.
Mr. Shapiro.
Well, see, I see a different way. I see a different happening. As an attorney who represents working families, they're struggling. They're struggling. A lot of them don't have stock portfolios. It's not really helping them in any way, shape, or form. They have to have 2 jobs. They still can't afford health insurance. They can't afford daycare. They're having problems putting food on the table, and they have 2 jobs. I mean, they're underpaid, and it's a real problem. I mean, that is the issue with the tax law that we just discussed a moment ago. It was very beneficial to the people who didn't need it. However, the working families really weren't getting sufficient tax benefits or the breaks, which will enable them to, live a life. And there are people that we know that have to live 30 miles away from where they work because they can't afford the housing in the particular area. So it's a different kind of economy. Now, it was starting to get on that great path when President Obama was in office, and it's still a continuation. But there's so much more work to do that has to be done. So maybe where Mr. Buchanan goes to have his breakfast and whatnot, I'm seeing a lot of different problems associated with this economy.
All right, Congressman, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
Let me just say that he's against it. We cut families of four in this area $2,400. It makes a big difference. Pelosi, who recruited him, basically said it's crumbs. It's not crumbs to these working families. So I think as the economy grows, talk to anybody. Talk to anybody that's in business trying to attract and get good people. We have businesses in town that my son runs. I talk to him a lot about it. He's having to pay more. Our people are making more because of the economy in general. This is one of the best economies that we've had in a long time. Unfortunately, in law offices, maybe they don't recognize that, but the average business guy out there, small business guy, does make a big difference.
We have to take a, David?
Well, you know, I have clients who work, not the folks that work for my office, but I represent working people, and I know what they're struggling. The wages are not going up. You just mentioned it. In fact, their buying power is even less right now. So this is not the booming economy for everyone.
All right, let's take a quick break. Coming up next, the most important question everyone watching this will have to face. Welcome back to the 16th Congressional District Debate. Joining us is Republican Vern Buchanan and Democrat David Shapiro. The next question, David, I believe goes to you. More than half of the people who are watching us right now are covered by health insurance through their employers, not the Affordable Care Act. And according to the State Health Access Data Assistance Center, the cost to employees are up across the board. Copays up 2.4 to 4.2%. Premiums are up 5.5%. Deductibles up 10.7%. For many families, this wipes out anything that they gained through the tax cuts last year. So with all the talk about the Affordable Care Act, what would you do to fix employer-based insurance so middle-income families can keep up?
All right. Well, the Affordable Care Act has indeed provided coverage to millions of Americans that otherwise couldn't have received it. And now we're starting to see the people are starting to see the benefits. Now, when it was first passed with opposition, there was a lot of talk. I know that Congressman Buchanan did not vote for it, but now we see the benefits. So what we have to do is work on that particular program, get more people involved in it so we can drive the cost down. It's really that simple. You get more participation, get young people and healthy people to sign up. That'll drive the cost down across the board. I think that will fix it.
But I'm asking about employer-based insurance, which is actually also becoming unaffordable to more and more middle-income families.
Well, you know, there's going to be an option to get on the ACA, and that'll help drive down the cost of the employer-based system. I mean, if you can get it competitive, you can make it. You can drive the cost down.
Okay, Congressman, the same question to you. We're not talking about the Affordable Care Act. We're talking about employee-based insurance, which the premiums and deductibles are going up almost every year, and it's actually covering less.
It's a huge problem. That's where we have to try to work together. It's bankrupting the middle class. You talk about not having any money, you make a little bit more money. A lot of this cost has got pushed to them. My first 20 years in business, my wife and I, we paid for everybody's health care. The last 20 years, I'm sure in David's law firm, more and more gets pushed to the employee. So the typical thing in our town now is the employer might pay $700 a month or $10,000 a year, and then the employee, many times the family of four, is picking up $400. Then they have a $7,000 deductible. So it's a huge challenge and a problem. I would also say my biggest concern is, and I mentioned it before, is they're looking to go down the road with this concept of government-run health care, which would be $33 trillion. We don't even take that in, barely take that in 10 years. That puts Medicare, Social Security, and our veterans, their benefits, all they've earned, at risk. And someone says, is that the case? Yes, it's the case. You have 120 members on the Democratic side that have already signed up for it.
Okay, Congressman, a lot of Suncoast residents depend on Social Security and Medicare. Do you both promise that no matter what, that these programs, you will not vote to cut these programs or raise the retirement age, Congressman?
I'm on the committee, Ways and Means. Basically, we oversee health care, Medicare, taxes, trade, Social Security. I'm senior on that committee, so I'm just telling you for sure I'm going to do everything I can, not just for our district, but for seniors across America. I'm in a very good position to have a big impact on that. And that's what I'm concerned about. If you go to government-run health care, it means everybody's insured. 65 and under, you put all the seniors at risk in this district and across the country. I see it every day. You're going to put Medicare at risk, you're going to put Social Security at risk, and veterans, their benefits they've earned, all going to be at risk, and you're going to double the taxes for everybody just to pay for it. So it's a huge issue. And 120 members on his side of the aisle, he'll be there with them if he got up there, are for this, government-run health care. So it's the idea, Medicare for all is Medicare for none.
Okay, Mr. Shapiro.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. That has never been my position in terms of Medicare for all. My position has been and always will be, at this point, we have the Affordable Care Act. And if we can make it work, improve it, increase the amount of people participating, bringing in the young and the healthy, it'll drive down the cost. That will also help the employer-based systems because they'll have other options that will be a cheaper, better option. I don't know what Congressman Buchanan is talking about in terms of the Medicare for all. We're really not on the table. To answer your question, on the other hand, I would tell you that I will not do anything that would cut Medicare or Social Security. On the other hand, Congressman Buchanan agreed with Paul Ryan's budget that wanted to privatize Medicare, which would have been problematic, or privatize Social Security and then use voucher system in Medicare, which according to the AARP and other nonpartisan groups, that would have driven up the cost to the seniors by 5 times. So, you know, I would not be for that.
Okay. Congressman, let me give you 30 seconds to respond.
Let me just say, I think what David has never been up there, so he doesn't understand. He's going to work for and be bought by Nancy Pelosi. She's being pushed by the progressives. They've got 120 people already signed up for government health care. That's where it's going on their side. And for him to think something different is crazy. Now, let me just tell you, I've looked at the local numbers for what he's talking about, the ACA or Obamacare. But the bottom line is the average person in our area is $30,000 a year to get the silver plan. Now, if you get some subsidy, it's less than that, but that's what it is, $30,000 a year. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can afford that, the working class families.
We have to take another quick break. We are just getting warmed up. The 16th Congressional District debate between Congressman Vern Buchanan and Democrat David Shapiro will continue in a moment. When we come back, is it time to make a huge change? Welcome back to the 16th Congressional District debate. Joining us is Republican Vern Buchanan and Democrat David Shapiro. Congressman, you get the next question. In 2015, you called the national debt a ticking time bomb on Fox News. A balanced budget amendment is the first measure you wrote that you introduced in Congress, and once you wrote that it is the best solution and we must force Washington to balance its books and return fiscal sanity. But you, as you said, helped write last year's tax law, which increased the nation's budget deficit by 70% over the last year to $779 billion. Why was a balanced budget amendment a good idea in 2015 and not now?
It's a good idea at any point in time. I was on the Budget Committee. For 50 years, we balanced it 5 times. I don't have any trust in Democrats or Republicans. We need a balanced budget amendment. We've got it on the floor a couple of times. We didn't quite get there. But let me just say the last administration, when Pelosi became Speaker in 07, and Harry Reid in 07, and Barack Obama in 08, for that 10 years, they ran up $10 trillion in debt. They ran up more debt than George Washington to George Bush, if you go back and look at the math. And so I have no confidence on either side. Now, that being said, we have record amount of revenues because of the economy. Even with the tax cuts, record amount of revenues, we've got a spending problem, and that's got to get dealt with. That's the real issue. So we get more revenues than we've ever had right now, and yet we're overspending that too much. And that's why I want, like 49 out of 50 governors had, that you don't spend more than you take in, like families and small business. We need a constitutional balanced budget amendment just like they have.
Mr. Shapiro.
Well, I would have asked that very same question because I too am aware of Mr. Buchanan's the record of he wanted a balanced budget. Now, this is the same problem I have with the recent tax law. It increased it put another hole in it of like $2 trillion. And I don't understand why in 2015 it meant it was absolutely required to balance the budget now when there's this tax cut for particularly the wealthy, which we know, it's okay to have. And then I don't see anyone that I have met that actually had any benefit whatsoever from that tax law. So who is going to be able to pay those revenues? And how are we going to get that money back? When you're talking about not spending more, that's when you put Medicare and Social Security at risk, or the things that you absolutely need, like research for opioid crisis and our infrastructure. this is what the problem was with the tax law. You know, it was taking money from it was giving breaks to people who didn't need it. Now we need the revenue, and we have this giant deficit. And who is going to be able to? Who's going to have to pay it?
All right. If
Let me just
sure.
add quickly.
30 seconds.
He brought up that nobody benefits. I don't know who his friends are. Everybody benefits. 90% of Americans benefit. 90% get a $2,400 deduction. Small business gets $2,500. They get full expensing. So if you buy a copy or something in there, instead of writing it off over 5 years, you can write it off now. That saves you some money. It helps grow the economy. And that's why we're going to 3-4% growth, or 4% growth the last thing, because we're supercharging small businesses. They're creating more jobs, and that's why unemployment is difficult right now. And with that, people are getting bigger paychecks.
Right. If you want 30 seconds to respond to that.
And the other point was about the debt under the Obama administration. We were in the middle of a Great Recession. I mean, literally. I mean, it was absolutely necessary.
10 trillion?
Well, I mean, it was absolutely the Great Recession that was caused by the Bush administration. So something had to be done to avoid a Great Depression. So I don't think it's fair to compare that deficit at that time. Clearly, we didn't need to add another $2 trillion to the deficit.
But let me just say, just quickly, he blames it on the Bush administration. They were there 10 years. Pelosi, Reid, and Obama for 10 years. They ran up $10 trillion in debt. At some point, you got to take responsibility. If I put a person in business, I can't say for 10 years later, blame it on the last guy. You know, they were not pro-business, and as a result, we never got more than 1.5% growth, and that's why the country is struggling, or has been struggling as a result when they were there.
All right, let me ask another question that is really on people's minds. If it's not health care and their budget, it is the price of things that are going up after several years of relatively cheap gas. Gas prices have shot up. According to the AAA, global supply and demand concerns continue to weigh on oil prices, which are dragging gas prices higher. As a result, OPEC output remains low, and the U.S. sanctions are expected to limit exports from Iranian crude. Mr. Shapiro, as you know, that we left the Iran nuclear agreement, which really slowed up and cut down on Iranian oil imports. Was it a mistake to leave that agreement, yes or no? What would you do to lower the price of gasoline?
All right, well, it's a two-part question, obviously. In terms of whether we should have left the Iranian agreement, I wasn't in favor of it for different reasons when it was first entered into by the Obama administration. It was a matter of security for Israel. But once we got into the agreement, until such time as Iran absolutely broke that deal, I think we had an obligation globally to stay within that deal. And if there was a problem with it, we should have, consulted with our allies and tried to repair it as opposed to just abandon it. And now in terms of the cost of gasoline and the issues that you're talking about in terms of losing the oil from Iran, maybe now is a good time to start transitioning over to solar energy. Maybe this is exactly the reason why for so many years people have said, let's try to transition away from fossil fuel and start using solar and wind, because we're going to have these issues constantly. So that would be my response to that.
Congressman, same question to you.
When I first started running for Congress, the whole thing was get off foreign oil. So David and I kind of agree on this. We got a lot more capability. We've got a lot more production capability, but I think you need all the above. Solar is making a difference. The wind is making a difference. It's not a big difference. I like to get that technology, but we need to look at all the sources. But we are producing more. It's really about supply and demand in the world. And so I just feel we become more energy independent, but at the same time, I think I agree with David on this. We need to do all the above, every opportunity. I can tell you in the car industry, they're moving towards more and more electric cars. You're going to see radical change probably in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, we have to take a quick break. We have just one more round of questions. When we come back, one of the dire issues facing all of us. Stay with us. Welcome back to the 16th Congressional District debate, and joining us is Republican Vern Buchanan and Democrat David Shapiro. I do want to talk about gun deaths in the United States, particularly from Parkland to Orlando to Las Vegas to that church in Texas. Mass shootings with assault-style weapons and large-capacity magazines have left a bloody trail of death and heartache. No other country has this kind of problem to the degree that we do. So, Congressman, the question that a lot of people, especially in Florida, are asking is, should assault-style weapons and large-capacity magazines be banned?
for the Second Amendment, as you know. But I think the big thing, we've got to find a way. I met with the children from Parkland. In fact, I haven't said this much, but I was a teenager and had a gun put at my head, and I didn't think I was going to see the next day. So I've had that sensitivity about what they are going for. But there's one of the fathers have unfortunately lost his daughter in that, Pollock, and he's got a plan which is really geared around school safety. But we need to do more on mental health. I'm for 100% background checks. I was one that came out early on bump stocks. So there's a lot more that we can do, but we need to do it together, I think, and I'm hoping this next Congress. The bill that got passed in Florida, I think there was some good things there. One of the things on the red flag law that they put in place. So I think there's a lot of different things that we can do, and we clearly need to do it. We need to, most importantly, keep our children safe. I'm not for the idea of teachers carrying guns, but I do think we need to have security in some of these schools, and I know they are doing that, and that's an important thing.
Mr. Shapiro.
Well, my position is very clear on this. I believe certainly that it's not a binary choice between the Second Amendment and having gun safety. I've said it before, I have the endorsements of, early on with Gabby Giffords. I think that there's no reason to have a weapon, an assault weapon in civilian population. Certainly, a background check is absolutely imperative. We do not want people with a mental illness who have a history of domestic violence to have a gun. We should close all the loopholes. If we're going to go to the trouble of passing these laws, we must make sure that they can't be circumvented. And I do believe that we need more money in schools, not necessarily to arm the teachers, but to put people in there who can identify kids who are in trouble. Like, for example, the one at Parkland, I talked to an expert and said it was a flashing light that should have been really picked up. So we need to invest in that kind of security to make sure that people are aware of what's happening. It's the isolation of the kids, but absolutely we need to do something about gun violence immediately.
Okay, David, the next question is to you. We've been reporting on that caravan of several thousand men, women, and children, migrants from Central America heading to the U.S. border as we speak. President Trump says this is a national emergency and is considering sending U.S. troops to protect the border. Is it a national emergency, and should U.S. military go and protect the border?
We are a nation of laws, and we're a nation of immigrants. Our values should reflect both. We need strong border security. What I see happening with President Trump right now is he's getting everyone scared. He's dividing the nation. These are people who are trying to get away from horrific circumstances, not unlike some of our grandparents and our parents. So I don't know that we have to call out the military and start making claims that these are terrorists and they're murderers and they're rapists, when really are they really just people trying to get to the border to America? Now, does the military required? I don't think so. Do we need more border security? People can come and go through the process of vetting to make sure that bad people don't get into our country. I would certainly agree with that. But some of his language is divisive, and it's fear-mongering. So we have to keep our values. I understand that we have to have strong border security, and but yet we've got to be humane.
Congressman, again, is this a national security, and should U.S. military troops go to the border?
If we need to, we're completely different on this. You just can't let anybody come in. You'll have millions, tens of millions coming up from Central and South America. David's for open borders, and I think that's a problem. ICE is a big problem. My grandparents came from Finland, but they came here legally, and we process over 1 million people a year. And we're a land of immigrants, but you just can't let anybody come into the country. And David's open to that. When they go to the border, you're going to have 7,000 in the caravan. It could be up to 10,000. What keeps the next 10,000 from going there? So you just can't have open borders, get rid of ICE, and that's the mindset on his side of the aisle. And it's very, very unfortunate. And I think we got to send a tough message, and I will.
See, I would disagree with that. That is not my position.
What are you going to do? Just let them come in? All 7,000?
No.
What are you going to do?
No, you have to go down there, and you have to meet. But
Who's
you don't send the military.
There?
Well, you have ICE and you have the customs
ICE
control.
Isn't going down there.
You have customs folks who come down. What would you? But would you
Those
have
are
military and
Border
shoot
Patrol
them?
people.
Do you shoot them? I mean, you have to be.
You don't shoot
these
them,
are
but you don't let them
families
in.
that are trying to get away. Yes, it's a problem, and it's But is this the way to go? To make people afraid and call them terrorists and murderers, or do we want to just vet them and make sure that the right people come in. And I am not for open borders.
But 7,000 is going to lead to 700,000.
Let's try to get to one more topic
Okay.
before we have to take a break. Obviously, all of us here on the Suncoast have been dealing with red tide and green algae from Lake Okeechobee. I know, Congressman, that you've gotten a lot of money for Moat Marine Labs to find answers to it. Ron DeSantis, who's running for governor, has declined all money from Big Sugar during his gubernatorial campaign. It's been reported that you took over $100,000 for them. Is it appropriate to return the money? Does Big Sugar have a big responsibility for what they dump into our water supply?
Let me just say, if someone wants to support the campaign, then, I don't know how much they've given us lately, but, you got to raise for it's an $8 million race, you got to raise money. But the bottom line is, for me, take a look at my record. I just got $8 million, my bill, for red tide. Just co-sponsored another bill for $15 million. We just got that. And then we're talking about another $100 million that we're looking at. He's become a, election day environmentalist. But the bottom line is, what did he ever do before he got involved? The 10 years before I ever ran for Congress, basically I worked on Moat Marine in terms of a trustee. I was vice chairman of Moat Marine, and I worked closely with the CEO, and he has made it clear that I'm a leader on these issues.
David, a quick response.
Well, yeah, absolutely. No, I totally disagree with everything that Congressman Buchanan said. I have been environmentalist all my life. I've never denied climate change. I believe in science. I believe that the Earth is in peril. In terms of the money that was given, was brought down to Moat Marine, that's about research. I get it, but right now we need to actually do something. We know what's causing it. It is Big Sugar. We know that. So let's first start with stopping what is causing it, and then start doing the research how to mitigate the problem.
All right, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, the candidates will make their closing remarks. Welcome back. It's already time for closing statements, and by the congressman went first to open. Mr. Shapiro, you go first to close.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for this opportunity. Congress is broken. The politicians in Washington right now are so busy arguing with themselves, they're not getting anything done. And quite honestly, Congressman Buchanan is part of that problem. You cannot believe his comments when he talks about independent and bipartisan, because the record shows that he has voted 98% of the time with the Republican Party and 96% of the time with President Trump. He toes the party line, even when it means hurting people here at home. And people need someone who could go to Congress, work on both sides of the aisle, and get it done. The record shows that Congressman Buchanan has not fought for health care for working families and people with pre-existing condition. He hasn't fought for the protection of Medicare and Social Security for our seniors, and he hasn't really fought for the environment. He has a 9% rating with the League of Conservation Voters, and that's not good. We need someone who's going to reach across the aisle, work hard, fight for the families, fight for our community. If you elect me as your congressman, I promise you I will go to Washington and I will fight with you, and I'll work with anyone who will see that we can get this job done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just say, thanks for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you over the years, and I look forward to moving forward. But let me just tell you, that's why my opponent is losing this race. He's run a dark campaign, not on the issues. He's attacked me on the boat spent over $3.5 million with his dark friends from that, and it's really a tragedy. But the bottom line is, I'm in a very good position. I'm a senior member on Ways and Means, Social Security, Medicare, that I can weigh in a big way. I co-chair the third largest delegation in the country. That combination, I'm going to be able to deliver on things that are important to you. Tomorrow I'll pass the 16th bill that'll turn into law that helps us with red tide, that helps us with veterans, also in terms of helping with Wares Creek in Manatee County was something. It was almost a $50 million project. So I'm working for you. I tell people I'm humbled to be a congressman, but at the end of the day, I'm a representative. I'm going to do the best I can to serve you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both very much. Congressman Vern Buchanan, Democrat David Shapiro, thank you all for joining us. And stay safe on the campaign trail. And if you remember, democracy, this thing we got going, there's a saying, decisions are made by those who show up. So show up. Good night.